Macho, macho man. Every man wants to be a macho man. Macho, macho man.
Heard the song Village People right out of the 70s, right out of the macho era. Man, if there was ever an era of macho, it was the 70s. And if you're my age, you understand how important it is to be macho. I was raised by the macho. And so macho is what we're going to talk about today. But macho love mucho is the title of today's talk, and we're going to hear that God, Jesus, his apostles like Paul, are commanding us to be on the macho side. But of course, there's a lot more to say about that. Anyhow, welcome to Biblical. We are here at 1 Corinthians chapter 16, verse 1 to 19. And here at the Biblical channel, what we do is we talk about the Bible. We read the Bible, and then we talk about the Bible. It's a really simple formula that we read the Bible, talk about the Bible, and I'm convinced that as human beings, we're in the right spot if we're letting our brains be affected by reading the Bible. I know my brain's been affected for the better, always for the better, whenever I read the Bible, and I'm always amazed at what's in there. Every passage I come to kind of becomes my new favorite passage, and I've been doing this for 18 years. Anyhow, our passage today, 1 Corinthians chapter 16, verse 1 to 19, we're reaching near the end of the letter, but if you know me at all, you know I don't want to end this thing because I've been having too good of a time in Corinthians, and we're going to have one more Corinthians talk after this. But let's do what we need to do. Let's read the Bible. 1 Corinthians 16, 1 to 19. Now concerning the collection for the saints, as I directed the churches of Galatia, so you also are to do. On the first day of every week, each of you is to put something aside, store it up, as he may prosper, so that there will be no collecting when I come, and when I arrive, I will send those whom you accredit by letter to carry your gift to Jerusalem. If it seems advisable that I should go also, they will accompany me. I will visit you after passing through Macedonia, for I intend to pass through Macedonia, and perhaps I will stay with you or even spend the winter, so that you may help me on my journey. Wherever I go, for I do not want to see you now just in passing. I hope to spend some time with you, if the Lord permits, but I will stay in Ephesus until Pentecost, for a wide door for effective work has opened to me, and there are many adversaries. When Timothy comes, see that you put him at ease among you, for he is doing the work of the Lord, as I am. So let no one despise him. Help him on his way in peace, that he may return to me, for I am expecting him with the brothers. Now, concerning your brother Apollos, I strongly urged him to visit you with the other brothers, but it was not at all his will to come now. He will come when he has opportunity. Be watchful, stand firm in the faith, act like men. Be strong. Let all that you do be done in love. Now I urge you, brothers, you know that the household of Stephanas were the first converts in Achaia, and that they have devoted themselves to the service of the saints. Be subject to such as these, and to every fellow worker and laborer. I rejoice at the coming of Stephanas and Fortunatus and Achaicus, because they have made up for your absence, for they refreshed my spirit as well as yours. Give recognition to such people. The churches of Asia send you greetings. Aquila, Priscilla, together with the church in their house, send you hearty greetings in the Lord. All the brothers send you greetings. Greet one another with a holy kiss. Praise be to God for his words. And of course, whenever we hear God's words, it only seems natural that we would pray. And I just love praying the way Jesus taught us how to pray. It's pretty simple. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our debts as we have forgiven our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. We come here to see Jesus and him only. Amen. All right, so the reason why I'm focusing on the whole idea of macho, and I do mean macho, is the text, as we heard in that one little line, really is a strong encouragement to be, well, a macho. Not a macho in the 70s village people way, not a macho in the way that my father raised me, not in the macho in the way that my friends and I treated each other growing up. And I am a thorough product of the 80s. And I mean, I don't know that anybody could have been raised in a more macho environment than I was. My father encouraged me to be a fighter. From a very young age, he made it very clear to me that not only that I should fight, but if I did fight, that I should win. That's some pretty interesting advice coming from your father, especially when your own father actually demands that you get into fights. And I'll add one level of weirdness onto that even. I was such a fighter growing up that I even got in a fight as a 17-year-old. I got in a fight with one of my dad's friends. And I won. So all my life I grew up with fighting. My friends all fought, my neighborhood cronies, the Mount Chestnut boys. I think we all fought each other on a regular basis. At high school, at middle school, man, it just always seemed like it was going to end up in a fight. And I also told my kids, it's a strange thing, but I think I fought most of my friends. Fisticuffs, that kind of stuff, wrestling, putting each other down. So I will tell you this, that is not what God is calling for us. But there's something in that God is calling for us. And here's where Paul and his encouragement to us comes. He says, in a very masculine set of words, in a very masculine line, in the middle of everything that we just read, is this: be watchful, stand firm in the faith, act like men, be strong, let all you do be in love. I got to be honest with you. I did not become a Christian until I was firmly in my mid-20s. And part of the reason why I couldn't see myself ever becoming a Christian was because it really seemed to be contradictory to everything that I had been raised to think of in myself. I got to be honest. Christians seemed a little on the pansy side. And I don't mean to be negative. I'm just saying that that's the way I was seeing it. And that's the way the macho men in my life kind of portrayed Christians. And, I was easily swayed. I didn't know a lot of Christians who were tough. I didn't know a lot of Christians who were manly or, in the manliness that I was told manliness is. And I was really, really overwhelmed with this part of my life whenever it did come time for me to be a Christian. Because in some ways, I felt like, there's no place for what I was taught in being macho. But then I came across passages like this, and I realized that The idea of macho itself isn't so bad if you have the right, bigger idea around what God's idea of macho actually looks like. So again, it's that center little line that we read: be watchful, stand firm in the faith, act like men, be strong, let all that you do be done in love. If you read the Greek underneath that, I'm telling you, it comes across as very muscular. It comes across as very, tough in almost every way. But we have to take that little line and see that Paul has placed this right in the middle of what he wants you to be strong and macho with. And even the line tells us, let all that you do be done in love, meaning be a strong weight bearer when it comes to love. We've heard this before from Paul. It's no surprise that he's going to finish the letter like this as well. But it's a real challenge, I think, to men, especially to men. I don't think I'm saying much whenever I say that, truly, the world's problems have come from a toxic masculinity. And when I say toxic masculinity, I'm talking about the world wars that have been fought. I'm talking about, the damage that has been done in the name of being macho and bullying people. And men are the culprits, man. Women don't start wars. It's just that simple. The men have a lot to answer for. But it's also important to know that God is not calling men, to be women. And I don't mean that in a controversial sense. I mean that God affirms the man being a strong man. And women, too, can find a place in the kind of strong man that's being talked about here. This is not a gender-sided conversation at all, it turns out. But I think it should capture the attention of men who might be caught up in that village people idea of being macho, to have that kind of body that's always in demand. And, well, that's just not it. But there is a body involved in God's idea of being macho. And when we take a look at how this passage informs this very masculine, muscular portion of Paul's words, we're going to come away with a big picture of real Christianity and real church. And we've already heard Paul describe real Christianity and real church as the body of Christ. And this is supposed to be a strong body. The church historically has been one of the strongest bodies the world has ever seen. And Christ is the head of that body. And so there's no apologies for the masculinity that Paul is calling all of us, men and women alike, to be watchful. To be watchful is to be on guard. To stand firm is, it's to take a position so that you don't get knocked down. To act like men says what it says, but it really is a picture of carrying the load, carrying a burden. Be strong. Can't get any simpler than that. But the big corrective that Paul adds in there is let all that you do be done in love. And ladies and gentlemen, I got news for you. In order to be a real godly lover, you've got to be strong. It's a real picture of strength. Love and strength go hand in hand. And we know that. I didn't tell you anything new. But I do want to go back to the beginning and to the end of this passage. I want to work out how this end of the letter completes a really nice look at the strength that the apostles, that Jesus, that God is looking for out of God's people in the churches. Okay, so this is not one of those passages that probably gets preached on any given Sunday. So enjoy. And I think you're going to come away with a lot to see here. The first thing that Paul talks about is this collection for the saints. And this collection for the saints that he's talking about, he talks about in other letters too. It's very important for Paul in his churches, the Gentile churches. And if you're a Gentile, then Paul's your apostle. He's the apostle to the Gentile. The other 12 are the apostle to the Jews. Now, that doesn't mean that Paul didn't, talk with Jews. He's a Jew himself. Of course he did. And that doesn't mean the Jewish apostles, didn't talk to Gentiles. Of course they did. Peter's, been at this church in particular. But there's an idea here that Paul is building into his churches. And so he's talking about this collection for the saints in Jerusalem. Now, Jerusalem's pretty far away from Corinth. It's quite the journey. You either have to take a ship, and go down towards Jerusalem, and you're going to have to travel land to some degree, no matter what, or you can travel the whole thing by land. Either way, it's a pretty intense journey. It's not nothing easy. It's just not down the road. But I think the thing to see here is how Paul is building a mentality in the Christian community, a mentality of giving, and not to just themselves. This isn't a country club where we raise money to put up a new roof. No, this is an organization that is on the way to being a world organization, which involves people from all nations, which involves people that are different than you. And so what Paul is building into the churches, the early churches, is this idea of giving, and that they need to give to others outside of their town, outside of their geography, outside of their own ethnicity, outside of their own nationhood per se. And so it is historically accurate that the Jewish, the Christians who were in Jerusalem, who were largely of Jewish background, but the first Christians in Jerusalem really found it to be a difficult place to be, because the Jews who didn't become Christians were pretty hostile towards them. And so it became very difficult for job opportunities, and there was a lot of poor Christians in Jerusalem because it was such an insiders kind of group when it comes to the Jews who lived in Jerusalem and those who did not become Christians. And this is where the other 12 apostles did create a headquarters, so to speak. And one of the things that we get a sense of is that Paul, as he's going out into the Gentile world all over the Roman Empire, it's pretty important that there is still this idea of togetherness, that Jerusalem and the other 12 apostles and the Christians who are in Jerusalem, that they still matter, that they're not being left in the cold, or left for the cool people out there in the Greco-Roman world. No, Paul builds in a mentality of giving that goes beyond the people that you normally brush up shoulders with. And so he's building this picture of giving, and it's giving to the bigger family. And Christianity is a big worldwide family. You can never forget that at the heart and soul of people who stand firm in Jesus Christ, that we are part of a group that spans every nationality, every ethnicity, and in all parts of the world and all parts of the globe. It is so important that you and I and every Christian build in an awareness of how important it is to support Christians who are outside of our normal sphere of influence, to the big family, because that's what this thing is. It's a big family. To those outside of your community. For instance, Shelley and I have for a probably the longest continuous stream of giving, we give to Compassion International. We feel like it's been a good organization. It's an organization that can actually navigate the local customs and get money and get supplies into the heart and soul of their communities where Christians are, and a lot of those Christians aren't doing well. And so we've always been a big part of Compassion International. There's plenty of other organizations, mind you. Salvation Army. I think here in the United States, the Salvation Army is truly unlike any Christian group out there. I don't think, I think that the Salvation Army, it can be a place that, maybe it's not for everybody. But the fact is that the Salvation Army puts real support into real hands at a local level. And so we are always giving to the Salvation Army as well, and not just change in the bucket. That's important. But, what Paul is calling the Corinthians to do here is to organize themselves on a regular basis, on a weekly basis, and to give out of their prosperity. Notice that's a very important part of this. You give out of your prosperity. God is not, putting an arbitrary number on your giving. You give out of your prosperity. The Bible always calls for a happy giver. It's not an arbitrary percentage, etc. It's out of your prosperity. But indeed, you should be giving. You should be a giver. You, as a Christian, should be known to be a generous person, to be someone who gives. I don't care what your politics are, but as a Christian, we ought to be known as givers. And Christians have been known as givers in a leading kind of way. And that's good. And we should continue that mentality. And so there's lots of avenues for our giving. It's always important to be connected, with organizations that are beyond our own communities that can help the brother and sister who's a Christian in a foreign land, in a different place than we are, etc., going down the line. So that is what it looks like to be watchful, standing firm in the faith, and acting like men, and being strong in all that you do. Do it in love. The second place that Paul goes is he talks about himself. And he talks about himself as he is coming through, and he's going to stop at Corinth again. Whenever he comes through Macedonia, he's coming to be with them. He loves them. He cares for them. He wants to spend time with them. And when he does, he will let them help him with his journey wherever he is going to go. And he's already made it clear that he's going to stay in Ephesus because there's a lot of good work to be done in Ephesus. And that, when he, does meet up with them, if he does meet up with them, then they can send their delegation, of people with their giving. And remember, giving in the ancient world was not an easy thing. It was not as easy as PayPal. It was not as easy as sending a check in the mail. You had to send real currency, a treasure chest, coinage, and gold and silver, this kind of stuff. And so this was a very serious undertaking, and that's why Paul had earlier called them to write letters of recommendation to the people that they picked, so that as people journeyed with this money to Jerusalem, that indeed that there would be an official accounting of it, a legal accounting of it. So no funny business could enter in here. But the second place that Paul goes in talking about himself coming to be with them as a sojourner, he's going to cross paths with them. It's a huge reminder to the church of Corinth and to all churches that you are to apply your macho love, mucho. You are to apply this to the people that God has crossed your paths with. I remember clear as a bell, a gentleman by the name of Joe Garlington made it very clear that when you become a Christian, you give up a life of happenstance and accidents. Every person that crosses your path is directed by God, and you need to see it that way. And that means you need to be aware of the elders, the people in the church that come into your life, and they come into your life as mature people, as people who are doing the work, and they're doing the work well. It's up to you to be a part of them and to be ready to receive them and to be ready to send them out and to, glean from this relationship that you have. It's the idea of love being loved by the Christian community, and take seriously those who are your elders, those who are working harder than you maybe in the Christian sphere, getting out there, doing things, going places, writing books, writing encouragements, putting on seminars. These kind of people who are, I guess you call them church leaders, but just our elders, just the people who we cross our paths with, are no longer just accidents that we can dismiss, that we need to be a part of people's lives, that we are now connected and interconnected. And so the Corinthian church has to always be aware that it is forever connected to Paul, that even when he is not with them, they are to think of him coming any day. They are to think of him coming at any moment. And I so appreciate this. I appreciate the leaders or the elders in my life who have been so helpful to me in Christianity. I literally live with the expectancy that they might show up at any time. They might watch one of these videos at any time. I still live, with the idea that God is going to cross my paths with many people, and it's going to be up to me to recognize them whenever my path crosses with them, and to treat them with the respect, the kindness, and the involvement that I should. And I think of, all of the sent ones, like with our own church recently, we don't get many missionaries who go international come to us at our little mountain church, but we've had Sean and Carrie Blake, and they came to us, and we tried our best to partner with them, to love on them, to be supportive of them, both financially and to hear what's going on with their efforts and staying in touch with what they're doing. And I know that people from our church have been a part of their newsletter. You see, when people come in and across your paths, and honestly, they just showed up at our church one day and they spent some time because they were on break, as missionaries. But that is not a happenstance. That's not an accident. And we've got to treat it very seriously. There is no book, no religion that makes it clear from beginning to end how important the sojourners are. And you never know who you're entertaining. And you were even told in different places you might be entertaining angels. But the idea is that we need to take the people who cross our paths and those who come into our lives as our elders, we need to take them people very seriously. We have been blessed as a church to have my own mentor, Jim and Leslie Ramsey, come in. And I really do imagine every time I put together a Bible talk, I imagine Jim Ramsey listening, because he was probably the guy who was the most formative for me in the most formative time for me. But there's many people that have come along, and I put them in that place too. I think of Dave White, and I think of Philip Jensen, and I think of, there's so many people. Whenever I put together a Bible talk, I put them in the audience because I want to be loved by them. I want to show them love and respect, that I've listened, that I'm careful with what I do and with what I say, that the people who come into my life are no longer happenstance. They're a part of my life. And that even goes with our church. Our church is so blessed to have regular out-of-towners, people who are not with us most of the time, but they become part of us part of the time, because we're a resort town. And we have been so blessed, at different times in the life of Grace Community Church. Almost half of our budget comes from out-of-towners at different times, people who, are regular stoppers. And so it's important to see that part of our strength, our watchfulness, our standing firm in Christ and acting like men and being strong is about recognizing those who come into our lives and always being ready for them to be a part of our lives. I think of, some of the visiting preachers that we've had, like Mr. Dennison, and how valuable that is for us. So here, when Paul's talking about himself, he's coming through, that they ought to be mindful of the fact that he's coming through. And when he comes through, he wants to spend time with them. It's just a huge reminder that this is what God does. He crosses our paths with people, and our lives are never the same after that. We always remember them, and we always live in expectancy of being a part of their life in some meaningful way, as much as we can. And then Paul moves on to Timothy, and he says, when Timothy comes, see that you put him at ease among you, for he is doing the work of the Lord as I am. Let no one despise him. Help him on his way in peace, that he may return to me, for I'm expecting him with the brothers. And I think this is yet another place where we are to apply our macho-ness, that we are to apply our watchfulness, our standing firm and acting like men and being strong, is to actually love the young, enthusiastic gospel workers. And if you don't know a young, enthusiastic gospel worker, then you need to get to a place where you can meet some. And again, I'll just talk about our little church up in the mountains, which hardly seems worth paying attention to. But we have been so blessed to be a part of young people who have come into our church, and we've grabbed a hold of them, and we've even made programs to bring young people into our church to give them that experience that they need to become gospel workers. And we as a church have to be enthusiastic. As Christians, we've got to be enthusiastic about gospel workers, especially young gospel workers. Timothy was just a young person, and Paul says, don't let anybody despise them. Despise him. We know that the Corinthian church is a tough place, man. These are rough people. We know that. We've been through this letter. This is a very fractional place, and this is a place that's not for, well, I guess the nice people in some ways. And, young Timothy, he's a nice guy. And Paul's saying, you make sure you take care of that young man. Be enthusiastic about the young gospel workers. I think of Becca and Chris Schrum. Becca, I've known Becca since she was less than a teenager, I think. I've known Becca for 18 years, and Becca might be 26 or so, something like that. So yeah, I've known her even before she was a teenager, and I've watched her become a young lady. She gets married, and she gets married to this great guy, and they've become gospel workers. They work for, it's escaping me, but the Campus Crusade for Christ, and they're on campuses, and they're working with young people, and they're getting out there, and I support them, and a lot of people in our church support them. And we need to be supportive of our young gospel workers, man, because that's what Christianity is. It's a movement. It's a movement of people, and we always need to bring the young people up and make sure that we're supporting them, loving them, and making sure that they're enthused about continuing on with gospel work. Because when you're an old salty dog like me, you're not as nearly as effective as they are. And our little church up in the middle of nowhere created a program where we would bring in young gospel workers who are in seminary to take over for the summer. And I think about, Ben, and I think about Wally, and I think about Matt and Jason and Ryan and the many others that we've had who they come in for the summer and they take over and they get their experience, and nobody despises them. Nobody puts them down. We know that we're a part of their growing into their gospel work, and that's so important for us all to be a part to. And that's what it looks like to be Jesus strong. That's what it looks like to be Jesus macho. That's what it looks like to be God strong and to be carrying the load, to be a part of people's lives. I think of Jeremiah too, and all those young West Virginians that came into our midst and hung out with us. We have been so fortunate to have had these people. And again, the idea is that you need to be an active participant in Christianity, because Christianity is about the family of God. It's about the family that God is putting all over the place, and we need to be a part of each other's lives. Now, 16:12 is kind of a funny line because he says, "Now concerning brother Apollos, I strongly urged him to visit with you and the other brothers, but it was not his will to come now." It cracks me up because we remember how Paul started this letter. And he started this letter by criticizing the Corinthian church for falling into three divisions: those that follow Paul, those that follow Cephas, who's Peter, and those who follow Apollos. And most likely that fell on some racially or ethnically divisive lines: the Roman, the Greek, and the Jew. And Paul kind of hilariously makes sure that they know that the funny business that they tried to create by saying that they were so serious about Christianity that they followed one of these leaders and that they were different because other people followed different leaders. Paul's saying, man, that's nonsense. He says, oh, by the way, I talked with Apollos. Oh, did you ever get caught like that? Did you ever try to make trouble between a couple people and then they backfired on you because they actually talked and they talked about how you were making trouble? I can't think of a specific situation, but I feel like I've done that a lot. Anyhow, Paul drops in there that, yeah, I talked to Apollos. We're united. And Apollos is going to come whenever he can. But know that we talk. So put an end to the funny business. Put an end to the divisiveness. Put an end to all fractions and cliques and this, the worldly stuff. Put an end to that, man. Be strong, be watchful, stand firm in the faith of Jesus Christ that God has given us. Act like men. Carry the load. Be strong with one another. Let everything that we do be done in love. This is the picture of strength that Paul is talking about. Macho, love, mucho. That's my phrase. Macho, love, mucho. Pardon my butchering of the Spanish language. I don't mean any harm by that. But macho, yeah. But love, mucho. That's what real macho is about. Loving mucho. And everything that Paul is doing is creating this great picture of how to put love into action, how to put love into a godly package of real strength, and how to use real strength and real macho-ness in God's service. He then, in verse 15, says, I urge you, brothers, you know that the household of Stephanas were the first converts in Achaia. And then he refers to Fortunatus and Achaicus. And he talks about these people as being the kind of people that you need to recognize, that you need to honor, that you need to admire people like Stephanas and Fortunatus and Achaicus. That these are the kind of people, not your sports figures, not your politicians, not your Hollywood personnel or whoever they are. Those aren't not your favorite singer. Those aren't the people to admire. The people to admire are the gospel workers and the people in your life. See, Stephanas and Fortunatus and Achaicus, they're Corinthians, and we know that the Corinthian church has been, kind of a chaotic row of sorts. And Paul is saying, you need to admire the right people. It kind of reminds me of that Waylon Jennings song. You got to know the difference between yo-yos, bozos, bimbos, and heroes. And the heroes in Christianity are not the heroes that this world picks out. This world picks out lousy heroes who are really just yo-yos and bozos and bimbos. Real heroes in the Christian faith are people like Stephanas and his family, Fortunatus, who is probably a slave, as well as Achaicus. There's good reason to believe that both Fortunatus and Achaicus are slaves in this church community in Corinth. And Paul is elevating them to the kind of people that they need to recognize and to admire and to keep in the spot of hero in their lives, to follow their lead. Paul's in love with these three guys, that everything they do is in service of Christ, and they are true, strong leaders. They are a picture of being watchful, standing firm in the faith, and acting like men, and doing all that they do in love. You get the picture? The last place that Paul lands is the churches of Asia send you greetings. Aquila, Priscilla, together with the church in their house, send you hearty greetings in the Lord. All the brothers send you greetings. Greet one another with a holy kiss. Apply your love to being loved by Christians. Live your life being loved by other Christians. See yourself in the big picture of God's people. See yourself being prayed for by other Christians. Did you know, no matter who you are as a Christian, no matter where you are, there are other Christians who are praying for you. There are churches who are praying for you. There are. There always are. The real heroes of the faith are those who are always in the business of loving the brothers and sisters under Jesus Christ. And they're always pulling for you. And so I would say, live up to the prayers that other people have for you. Live up to being prayed for. Be happy for all the churches. Don't be a divider. Don't be haughty and snotty and picking your winners and your losers. That's a losing game. Get with the program. Apply God's macho-ness to loving mucho, loving a lot. Be big love. Be big love, because that's what it looks like to be in Christ Jesus. And to just wrap this thing up, I've got to say, God has absolutely changed my idea of what being macho looks like. Being macho means much love, loving much, caring for others, acting like a man means being strong and standing firm and being watchful for others. Being mindful of God's big plan all around you. Being mindful that I am now part of God's family, and I am to pray for others, and I am to live a life worthy of being prayed for. Big love. This is a picture of real Christianity. This is a picture of real church. Remember, the word church only means meeting. And it's a meeting of, real Christians. And so when you think of Christianity, and then you think of church, and then you start thinking of buildings, you've got the wrong idea. This is about a real God who really loves people, and that people who know the real God in Jesus Christ really love, because God's love is on them. And that's what Paul is wrapping this whole thing up with. He is building a clear picture of what strong, action-oriented love looks like. And it's all around that one little line in 16, 13, and 14. Well, as always, best thing I can say is, I love you. Take care. Got one more.